My name is Laura Rowton, and I'm the co-owner of Rowtons Museum of the Paranormal and Spirituality in Carmarthen, Wales. Rowtons Museum is the culmination of many years of work that myself and my husband Erik have been doing. So for the past 9 years, we've been researching the paranormal professionally, predominantly through our YouTube channel and documentary films that we've released. More away from the camera, we've been doing other sorts of research, hands-on research, and even shadowing different professionals and people within the paranormal, including paranormal investigators and psychic mediums on house cases and things like that. And also, important for the museum, collecting artifacts. So our artifacts are divided, I would say, into two categories: those of pure historical significance and those of paranormal significance. And that might include, and it certainly does include, objects which are said to be paranormally active, haunted, cursed, occult objects. So the museum is a place for these objects to be put on display for the public to come and interact with them and hear their stories. And not only that, to have exposure to the paranormal and spirituality in a way that perhaps they don't get the opportunity to do so in their everyday lives. I would say this is definitely a haunted museum. Not only do we have many unique objects here which have their own energies and paranormal stories connected to them, both things that Erik and I have experienced, things that guests to the museum have experienced, but also in the case of donations, previous owners have experienced. But on top of that, the museum is actually housed in a very special building. The building is Grade 2 listed, and it is a Victorian Baptist chapel and also a schoolroom. So the building has ghosts of its own, I'm quite certain. Erik and I have both had quite peculiar experiences, and also in the relatively short time that we've been here, we've had local people approach us with stories of their own actually related to the building. So I'll give you one as an example. There's a local man who lives on the same road as the chapel. He reached out to us and said that quite regularly over the course of the past 6 years of him living on the road, he can see through the upstairs gallery windows of the chapel and sees at night a light actually moving about the gallery, somewhat similar to a candle or torchlight or a lantern. So there certainly shouldn't have been anybody in the building up on the gallery at night in the course of the chapel's history for the past 6 years. There's many ways that you can come and visit the museum. Currently, we don't offer a self-guided option, but we do have many slots for guided tours where Erik and I actually lead a group no larger than 6 people around the museum, showing off the different artifacts, the stories behind them, and how they fit into the tapestry of belief and spirituality through time. Then at the end of our main, most popular guided tour, we actually let you have a bit of a free run of our haunted objects room where everything's labelled and you can go at your own pace to explore the items there and have the chance to ask us questions. Other events that we host include our very popular seance evenings in this room that I'm in right now, our beautiful seance parlour. So those evenings are very stripped back. We go through the history and the traditions of the Victorian seance and actually give guests the opportunity to participate themselves at this very table. We do this by candlelight, and we use spiritualist instruments and replicas of historical spiritualist instruments, including things like automatic writing planchettes, and also a very wonderful spirit lamp that is a faithful replica of such an item dating to the 1930s. So we do a lot there, and we always have wonderful results. It's a really good opportunity for people to come in and have a spiritual experience in a safe environment, and also quite a calm environment because we like to keep it so stripped back. Plenty of peculiar things happen during those seance evenings. One of my favorite parts is when we get to use the automatic writing planchette, and we get these wonderful pieces of paper that have sometimes even words written out on it by the end of the night from the spirit which is said to be guiding the planchette. And I always enjoy watching guests' faces light up when they realize that they're not the ones pushing the planchette and yet it moves. Erik and I will lead an opening to the session and will help to build the energy, particularly for those who don't have as much experience participating in seances as we do. But then we always like to kind of take a step back, and we're still here, but we'll take our hands off the planchette, for example, and just let it happen and let the spirits who want to speak. Guests will claim that they have had family members reach out to them, whether that be through the writing planchette or other instruments that we use, or indeed sensations that they pick up in the room. One time, quite sensationally actually, we were around the table, and it was in the early part of the seance where we're allowing the energy to build, and we started having taps and bangs in the room, even from underneath the table itself. It felt very much as though there was somebody towards the center of the table thumping up on the underside of the wood. I even had a little bit of a look around at the other guests to see if anybody was falsifying it, because it was so shocking, even for me, because of just how loud and close those bangs were. So depending upon the group that you get in, the phenomena can actually be quite different from one seance to the next. For people who are more interested in the tech side of the paranormal, we also host tech nights where we pull all the gadgets and gizmos out of the cupboards and use those to see if we can get any responses from the building and its own energy or the items that we have on display. Routinely, we also host paranormal investigations, which run for about 6 hours, and they are very, very fun because they're in a way they're like taster sessions. You get to have a go at lots of different ways of investigating and researching the paranormal under the guidance of myself and Erik. The museum's actually a really big space, and many people who come here are actually quite shocked that the tour keeps going on, and there's more and more to discover, that they absolutely love it. So having such a big space gives us the opportunity actually to portion out our artifacts and the stories that we're trying to tell. So in the chapel portion of the building, we focus more on the lighter and more traditionally religious side of spirituality. We have, for example, an exhibit on angels and the sacred symbology of the peacock. I love that exhibit so much, and I very much enjoy opening with that when we begin our tour. We also have a section on Christ and exorcism and the power of the divine being used in order to protect and relieve people from demonic influence. So it certainly isn't all darkness and spooks at Rowtons Museum, but inevitably it does go that way because we do accept donations, and the donations that we do receive are those that people no longer want, and they no longer want them for good reason, and that's often because these objects are associated with, in some cases, quite horrific paranormal activity. So we have quite a mix of objects here, and we do like to keep them separate, and we have a system of protection and special care for those objects which require it. Funnily enough, I always thought that I would end up in museum work way back when I was a student at university. So I actually studied history at the University of Cambridge and thought I would end up on one of two paths, that I would either stay with the university and eventually get into teaching myself, or would find my way into a museum and curation and working with the public in order to educate them. Neither of those two things happened, at least not straight away anyway, and I ended up, whilst I was still a student, in fact, creating the Paranormal Scholar with my then fiancé, Erik. And one thing led to another, and ultimately that's the path that I continued down for the past 9 years, educating the public, also just perhaps not in the way that I thought. And I really love the paranormal because it is somewhat of a crossroads, I think, between psychology and belief and religion, and also history. So all my interests kind of rolled up in one. The paranormal makes history more tangible. So eventually finding my way back to museum work and opening Rowtons Museum really does roll all those passions into one for me. I really enjoy presenting the story of belief, of spirituality, of the paranormal to the public when they come here, and giving them a safe space to explore their own beliefs, whether they be fully developed or nascent, kind of tiptoeing into thinking about the nature of existence and the human condition. And having so many interesting, unique and important artifacts to help illustrate that story really is perfection for me. What's my favorite artifact at the museum? That's quite difficult because I feel like any given week it could change, particularly for the more active items. If one is being particularly loud and obnoxious, you're more drawn to that. But there are a couple, I would say, star objects that I really, really do enjoy. And they're not, at least we don't present them as, they're not paranormally active, but they may very well be because of their history. So they're two magic or talismanic scrolls which come from Ethiopia and date to the early 20th century. And they're actually artifacts of exorcism. They would have been used in order to relieve somebody who was thought to be demonically possessed. So they're incredible. They're made of vellum and they're each as long as the person that they would have been made for. They would have been made specially, ritualistically. Animal sacrifice would have been made and they are actually anointed with the blood of that animal. They have sacred imagery, angelic imagery on them, and also use an ancient Semitic language, Ge'ez of Ethiopia, and have these incantations and prayers and special prescriptions against the demons which were thought to be afflicting the two people that the scrolls were made for. So they're fascinating in terms of the history of belief, the history of exorcism. It's quite rare that you get such a tangible relic of exorcism. In terms of the ultimate artifact, what I would like to see the museum acquire moving forward would probably be something like a debug box. And I think that's simply because there's so much hype around the debug box and the story related to that, that I would like to see for myself whether these things are real, whether they do have the sort of energy that they're claimed to have. They have such an extreme reputation that I'm of the opinion that I would have to see something like that in order to believe it. So I would love to acquire something like that and have a chance to research it myself firsthand within the museum environment, and also to work with other people in the paranormal world to see if they can offer different insights into that object as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video, a little discussion about Rowtons Museum, the sorts of things that we do here, the sorts of objects and stories that we have. And hopefully that's enough to tempt you to come and visit us in the not too distant future. You can find out more about our events on rowtonsmuseum.co.uk. You can book tickets on there as well. And of course, sign up to our newsletter to keep up to date with all future happenings in Carmarthen at our wonderful museum here. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.